This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Purdy Insurance.
The great Gerry Dulac joins us. My friend, privileged to have you with us again. Thank you so much.
Well, Steve, as you know, I never miss an opportunity to go on with you. I have to tell you, your producer there sounds exactly like you.
Oh, geez. That confused?
And I told him that. When he said, Jerry, I said to him, does anybody ever tell you sound just like Steve?
I said that might be the nicest compliment I've ever gotten, and now Steve is going to be leaving the show now. So,
Right, there you go.
The conditions at Augusta National, and you have seen all of them in the incredible career you've had when you've had the opportunity to go cover it. No rain, hard, fast. What has it done? And also the fact that certain holes have been lengthened, 13 in particular. What has that done to this golf course that has made it play differently so far?
Well, the one thing it does do, Steve, is especially on the par fives, no matter what they've done to them, it shortens the par fives unless there's some heavy wind, directly at them, because the ball is tumbling, as they say, and so it's shortening the holes because of the amount of roll you are getting. But, like everything at Augusta, it's where you place the ball on the greens. What quadrants are you trying to hit? And that becomes extremely difficult when it's that firm, because now you don't have control of the golf ball, one, like you're accustomed, and two, especially like you would like. And so now Augusta can play this however they want. This isn't going to be the U.S. Open where the greens get away from them. They won't allow that. And the one thing is, when it's dry, the one thing superintendents don't like is when there's too much rain and too much moisture, because now they can't control the condition of the golf course. What they like is when there is no rain, because then they can control the moisture, with their water systems. So it's going to be up to Augusta National and the Masters people how difficult they want this to play. Now, they want it to be difficult, so I don't think you're going to see them all of a sudden soften it and dump a lot of water. But they're also not going to let the golf course get away from them. And the players like a firm, fast golf course. Let me backtrack a pinch. One thing they like about soft fairways is they know they have control of the ball. They can hit a spot and they know it's going to stay there. But when you get some of those slopes that you have out there, coupled with the firmness of the fairway, the ball's going to roll, and sometimes it's going to roll out of the fairway into the rough. Now, we know there's no rough there. That second cut is perfectly manageable. It's not an issue at all. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be up to Augusta National, Steve, and the Masters people to decide how firm and fast do they want this to play. They want it to play that way, and I think you won't see it be touched a whole lot. But again, it won't get to U.S. Open proportions where, the USGA loses control of the golf course.
Yeah, the USGA has, in my opinion, over the years, has always overthought it. And I think that when I look at Augusta National, like, this is our golf course, go play it. And also, too, all the leaders are going off late in the day tomorrow and going off late in the day on Sunday, so it doesn't matter what they do to it overnight. By the time they get to it, it's going to be the same as they're playing now.
That's right.
All right, so
I think, I was just going to say, I like seeing it this way. I saw it that way when Hideki won in 2021. Yeah. You don't see it that way too often. And, it was one of the things the last couple Opens, especially in 2016 at Oakmont, that Thursday storm took all the teeth out of that golf course, probably a stroke and a half per round. And even last year, some of the rain took a lot of the teeth, not a lot, but certainly a good portion of the teeth out of Oakmont. And so in 2016, that golf course was so firm and fast, leading right up to the opening tee shot on Thursday. And then that storm came, and it completely changed the complexion of the golf course right when they had it where they wanted it. And that's the way you want to see a golf course play. A little moisture isn't going to hurt it. you just don't want those heavy downpours that saturate it. And I know they have the sub-air system, and they've had it for years in Augusta, so they can suck some of the moisture out of it so it never gets too wet. But you want to see it. I think everybody wants to see it play firm and fast.
Over the years, people have discussed the long hitter and having success at Augusta. Jack Nicklaus was a long hitter in his era. But a guy like Zach Johnson, who's not a long hitter, has won there before. What is it? Can you figure out why Bryson DeChambeau hasn't been able to? This guy at one point said, I want to play it like it's a par 67 because he wanted to overpower it. And then he figured out he couldn't do it. What is it about him where he can win a couple of U.S. Opens, but he can't win here so far?
Steve, the fact, if you would have said before when his career started and as he started becoming a decent player, if you would have said, okay, Bryson DeChambeau is going to win two majors, the same two majors, which two do you think it'll be? They would have picked the U.S. Open last.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
You would think that game, that setup, does not fit his game. And, he's had some success at Augusta. Last year he did not play well in the final round in his matchup with Rory. But, you see what he did yesterday, four over. Now, he left two in the bunker at 11 and made triple. So three of his four shots over par were right there, on 11, and two of them in the bunker. And look, if he shoots, and he needs to shoot a low number today to be able to make the cut, to have a chance. I was more surprised at Jon Rahm, and I was equally surprised at Robert McIntyre. But Robert McIntyre doubled 9, and then he makes quad,
I think.
He made quad. He made quad at 15. So 2 holes did him in. But that's what can happen there. But to your point, when you look at the people with multiple green jackets, Jack, Tiger, Mickelson, Palmer, they're all long hitters. Watson has 2 of them, another long hitter. Augusta has always favored the long ball player. But you can hit it long, but you better be able to navigate and handle those greens, because that's what it's going to come down to. But, yeah, you would think Augusta National was suited perfectly for Bryson DeChambeau, and that's why he's always considered a favorite. And, Steve, he comes in here very hot. He won his last 2 live events, beat Jon Rahm in a playoff. He's been playing well, and, we'll see what he does today if he wants to kind of get back into the tournament, because I don't think any of the numbers are going to be silly where somebody's running away. Rory's still at the top, right, at 6.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to get a whole lot lower, to be perfectly honest.
See, that's why when I look at Justin Rose, who twice has lost in a playoff, Rory and Sergio Garcia.
Sergio, yeah, both of his Ryder Cup teammates.
Yeah, his Ryder Cup teammates. He's got himself again in the neighborhood. What have you always liked about his game? And is there any facet of his game that he hasn't quite overcome that's kept him to a major in his career, that U.S. Open at Merion?
And, I was there when he won that U.S. Open at Merion. And first and foremost, the thing I like best about Justin Rose is who he is.
Yes.
He's a good person. He's a professional. Great respect for the game, respect for his fellow players, the galleries. That's what I like best about him. But it's all the things of his game. His iron game, was always good. He was not the longest driver, and he became a long driver. And that includes, in his early 40s, where he started picking up length because he had to. He had to, and yet he did. And he works on his fitness. You can see that. And so, he's still a contender. I think he has more first-round leads at the Masters than anybody. And I remember year after year kind of making a joke out of it there, when I was there, and I'm writing there. You can count on the Azaleas and Dogwood and Justin Rose leading the Masters after Thursday. It's just the way it was. And he's always had the good starts. He just hasn't been able to finish, and yet there he is, with two playoff losses. In any other year, Steve, last year, everybody would have loved to have seen Justin Rose win, and they'd be pulling for him. Except that it was Rory's year.
Right, exactly.
And, but he's just a popular player, and the players like him. Obviously, the fans. I mean, yes, I know he's an international player, European player, but they live over here and they play over here, and he is a crowd favorite, no doubt.
Well, he's a crowd favorite because they see class. I mean,
that's right.
Class shows, and I covered that U.S. Open at Marion like you did, and I just sat back and I thought, like, this guy is a top shelf guy, let alone being a top shelf golfer, who's a better player now than he was when he was a phenom. He was like the phenom coming up at the right, and he's a better player now because I think mentally he is a better player. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And when he turned pro after the British Open at 19 or whatever he was at the time, or 17. I mean, that was unheard of back then. I mean, now you see guys doing Akshay Bhatia and a few others. But when he did it, it was like everybody thought he was crazy. And he struggled at the start, but man, he's just continued. He's stayed at it, and he's made himself into a world-class player. I mean, you knew that as an amateur because he was so talented as a teenager. But that's still a tough move, and yet he made it, and look what he's become.
I do have to ask you a couple of quick Steeler questions with the draft on the horizon, which is actually in Pittsburgh. Is there anybody among the 30 players that you're allowed to bring in and talk to that you found to be intriguing when you saw the name come up on the list?
Steve, I think over the years, I don't want to say I've learned not to read too much into that, because I know Mike Tomlin would bring guys in merely to throw other teams off.
Yes.
Bring them in as a smokescreen.
Yep.
So I tend to take all that with a grain of salt, and I tend to look at the guys I kind of know that they're probably interested in, and I rely more on what they tell me as opposed to what I see happening in those top 30 visits. I know I asked this of Kevin Colbert one time. I said, have you ever taken anybody with the number one pick who you haven't had in for a visit? And he said no. And I think when they took Jarvis Jones, I can't swear to this, but I didn't recall him ever coming in for a top 30 visit or whatever it was back then. But nonetheless, most of the time, probably 99% of the time, the guy they're taking is coming in for a visit, if for no other reason, for another medical checkup or whatever the case may be.
All right. So you've seen what they've done positionally in free agency. What does that lean you to think as to what they might do positionally in the first 3 rounds when they get an opportunity to pick? What are some of the positions that you will be anxious to see which direction they go in?
You know what's funny, Steve? I certainly don't think they have a Super Bowl roster.
Right.
But when I look at what they did in free agency and I look at their roster, there is no, trades and whatnot, including Michael Pittman. There's not a position where you sit there and say, other than quarterback, and they don't think that guy is there in the first 2 rounds for sure. And who knows if at all. Right. But I look at every position and I say, cornerback, they've signed Jamel Dean. Safety, they get Deshaun Elliott back. They have Jalen Ramsey. And I could look at defensive line and think maybe. I could look at left guard and go maybe. I could look at safety and think, okay, you get a guy who's supremely talented. You find a spot for him in your defense. And I see tight end. They really like the kid from Oregon.
And they should.
But I can't see them taking him with Freiermuth. But they're going to draft a tight end because they only have 2. They're going to draft one. I just don't think it's going to be their first one. But I will tell you, if he is there at number 21, there's going to be some discussion about drafting him. And I would get that because Mike McCarthy, to me, Steve, it's going to be an offensive player and it's going to be an offensive skill player. They have four wide receivers, DK Metcalf and Pittman, and then the next two are Roman Wilson and Ben Skoranek, a special teams guy. So know they're taking a wide receiver because that's the way he wants to play. Yeah. So if it's not in the first round, it's the second. So I don't see them. I don't see them needing a starter. Maybe at left guard. They say they like the guys they have, Spencer Anderson, but we'll see. And I think they didn't go get one in free agency, which I was told they were going to if Isaac Seumalo left, which he did, and they didn't. And so it wouldn't shock me if they drafted, a left guard, and if they drafted your guy up there. So
thank you, Ioane.
Yeah, depending on who's available. But, they like the safety at Oregon, Could I see them doing that? Yeah, I could see them doing that too.
Tiedemann, who had started his career at Purdue, transfers to Oregon, gets himself in a spot where great ball instincts and good measurables. Sadiq, the tight end, because, Penn State's played Oregon each of the last 2 years, plus I've seen Tiedemann
I know
at
you've
Purdue.
seen those guys. I haven't.
And Sadiq runs great routes, hands, size, and even in traffic makes plays, because you and I both, it's easy talking to Gerry. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's too quick for a linebacker. He's too big for a safety.
Right.
Okay, he's a matchup nightmare for people. If he's there and Mike McCarthy thinks the way he has to think, because you and I both know, okay, except for Mendoza, there is no first-round quarterback in this draft. I don't care what.
Right.
You can build up certain guys. I think that's irresponsible, building up certain guys. Just be realistic. There just isn't.
It was told to me within the last 2 weeks that they probably wouldn't look at a quarterback until the third round because they only think there's one in the first round, which tells me they don't have a grade any higher than that, than third round. And they're only going to take a guy if they feel he has a bigger upside than Will Howard. Mike McCarthy has certainly publicly gone out of his way to talk about Will Howard and what he thinks of his potential. So far as saying if he were coaching last year, Will Howard wouldn't have lasted until the sixth round. You look at Ty Simpson. I see a lot of people kind of projecting him to the Steelers in the first round. Well, first of all, that's not happening.
That's right.
Second of all, look at the Steelers. Look at the template, the physical template they have for their quarterbacks. Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, Aaron Rodgers, bigger guys. Ty Simpson is not that. What is he, 6'1", 210?
Yes.
Mike McCarthy talks about needing a physical, a stronger quarterback in December and January. And Ty Simpson isn't that. So the people who want to project him to the Steelers in the first round, that's not happening. And so I could see them going a number of different ways, to be perfectly honest, based on the talent level of the guy who might be dropping. I don't see them moving up to get anybody.
No.
But I will say, I think after having 2 6'4", 230-pound receivers, I think they might need a guy like Concepcion, smaller, coming out of his breaks, could get open faster. You know what I mean? I don't think you need another 6'4", 230-pound guy. They love the guy from Notre Dame, and they love the guy from Indiana who I like, who killed you guys with that unbelievable catch, Cooper.
Amari Cooper, yep.
They like him a great deal, yes. But, I'm not saying they're just going to go get a small guy, but to me, they need a different type of receiver, a guy who can get open, like I said, come out of his breaks quick, as opposed to the two big guys that they have right now.
And I'll make one last comment on the Simpson part. I'm not enamored with drafting a quarterback that has been a starter for a year. I need more video
right.
than that.
And that's the other thing with them. Most of the NFL now is enamored with experience. And it might be one of the reasons why the Steelers have talked to Carson Beck twice, both at the Combine and they brought him in. A bigger-bodied guy who obviously has tons of experience. I mean, look at Bo Nix. What did he start? 61 games?
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels, 55 games. You know, that's a big thing with guys now, and I'm with you on Ty Simpson. Played 1 year, and to me, not enough. Not enough.
Always more than enough when we get information from you. Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate you more than you know.
Well, Steve, we had some good golf talk, which, as you know, I always enjoy. So always glad to be with you, my friend. Stay well, and we'll talk soon.
We will talk soon. Thank you, Jerry.